As the great Leonardo da Vinci once said, art is never finished, only abandoned. Or as Beeple has said,
done and posted by the time this goes up. Posted.
Knowing when to call a piece of art finished can be pretty difficult, and in this age of hyper-fast content creation, you can find yourself second-guessing if you should really be spending the next 6 months on that weird little sci-fi project that you got tucked away deep in your hard drive, or if you should be spitting out daily TikToks of Shrek twerking to the newest Taylor Swift album. This has bothered me as long as I've been a 3D artist, so I decided to figure out once and for all just how long I should be spending on my art by creating a piece in 1 hour, 1 day, and 1 week. Without any more hesitation, let's get right into the video, shall we? Okay, so we have 1 hour. I already opened up some weird window. Let's get right into this. First things first, I'm going to add a cylinder. I'm gonna make a giant stack pipe, I'm thinking. And then I need to put something in my foreground, so I'm gonna frame this up first. Off angle. Okay, I'm gonna make a factory. So I'm not gonna see these roofs right here, so I'm not gonna do anything about them. I'm just gonna let them fly. Let's see, I think I need more cylinders. Cylinders are gonna be my friend because I can just wrap a texture around them and they look more complex than cubes. It's too much now. Cubes, you have come to save me in my time of need. I think I know what I'm gonna do with the stack pipe back there, so that's the thing I'm gonna worry about last. What next? Kind of determining the human scale without any human models, which is a terrible idea. My scale is gonna look crazy. Alright, let's go grab some assets and then I can come back in and finish this terrain, start adding textures, everything else, and we can wrap this up real quick. Okay, so we finally got all those assets installed, and now all of a sudden I'm having a panic attack. This one back here. We're actually going to do some work on this. I'm not going to do the full materials because I just realized how long that's going to take, and if I can't get the full materials done, it's better than having some things not have any texture at all. And then I'm going to use the magic of modifiers. Now I'm going to duplicate one, give it a wireframe modifier. This is a super cool trick. I use this so much. Thank you to Ian Hupers for this one. I don't know what I would have done without something like this. Let's see, clouds, scale that up. I'm going to place it where it's cool looking. Select that object and cool. Oh, that created a really nice effect. And then boom, okay, we got something. HDRIs, they're your friend. If you're really struggling with lighting, just HDRI. I got this nice moody one right here. Wow, that's nice. Okay, oh, that looks good right out the gate. I'll take it. Cool. That's great. How much time do we have left? Hey, 27 minutes. Yeah, rushing at the beginning. That's the trick. I figured it out. Okay, now we can start doing materials, like actually making these real materials and not just like image textures slapped onto something. Is that all the materials? Oh wow, it is. Oh no, almost missed one. This is a quick trick. Hue saturation value node. Hit hue and you'll get something. And I kind of head in the direction. You'll see that becomes more pink, that becomes more yellow. But I want something in between, so I'm gonna do 0.52. And then that's where we're at. Okay, that looks a lot worse than I thought it was gonna look. Oh yeah, puddle map. The foreground doesn't look great because we don't have any interesting lighting going on. I would usually do this a way that's optimized for Blender, but in this case that is not possible. Roughness all the way down so that it's like a reflection, it's like a mirror. My albedo texture to fill in the base color. Okay, I can go and put in a noise texture and add a color ramp, which will actually add enough contrast so you can see what's going on. Add some quick puddles. Yeah, you can kind of see what that does. It's pretty nice. Let's see, we have to make our final decisions here. We're at 18 minutes left.
5 minutes later.
13 minutes left. Okay, I'm gonna add a TV. I found this nice little asset, something to be our centerpiece. I'm gonna separate it. I'm gonna move that forward for now. I'm gonna duplicate it. It's gonna be a little warped, maybe a little weird, but isn't it supposed to be? And then I can bring that back to like here. Cool, that works. Make it huge. Have it half buried in the dirt. 10 more minutes left. One more thing. We only have 7 minutes for compositing. No big deal, no big deal. Camera raw filter. I always convert this to a smart object. A little bit of shadows, a little bit to the highlights. Grain, a little bit of grain always looks nice, and a little bit of texture. Sharpening, I like to sharpen a little bit. I have these noise textures right here that I bring in. You can find free ones online. You can find them really anywhere. I've built up a collection over time. So this one I'm gonna do a screen, I'll do another one. It just gives it a little bit of flair. It adds a really nice effect. And I think we're done. I think that's a render, and with 4 minutes left. Okay, so I did it. 1 hour artwork. Was it great? Absolutely not. Was it good? Not really. You see, a lot of these one-day artists aren't actually creating their artworks in one day. That would leave no time to binge Moist Critical. Instead, one-day artists are actually mostly doing what I just did, a 1-hour artwork, maybe 2 hours at most. And while for this piece I did a lot of the modeling and texturing myself, you'll find that most one-day artists are actually using a ton of assets and different utilities to essentially create art way faster than a normal person. So to be honest, while this does make you a faster artist, I'm not too keen on it making you a better artist. So now came the real challenge. With 24 hours to create the best piece I possibly could and little to no idea of how I was going to do it, I decided to press on and just start making something.
So let's just start with a plane. Okay, so I think I'm gonna make an apartment in like a skyscraper. This is like one floor, looking out at a barren city.
I began adding background buildings. Again, not being sure of how I was going to finish them in time before midnight, I knew that placing and resizing some cubes would at least give me a goal line. I tested a method of finishing them off with the closest foreground building and kept an eye on how long it took me.
Okay, so I got this little building done, only that many more to go.
Now I had many more buildings to create, but I found that getting some images of buildings projected onto the cubes at least made them kind of look like buildings and allowed me to move on to other areas.
Adding loop cuts, lots of loop cuts. Solidify. Was it worth it? I think so. So they all have the same details, so that's just using linked duplicates. So if I made an object and I don't want to recreate it, I can just hit Alt-D or Option-D on Mac, then both shapes will be linked. Does it look super good close up? Not really. Is there a trick for that? Maybe. Take this, duplicate it, switch it to not in color, put in a bump node. Then what happens is you end up with a little bit of bump detail. I think what I'm ready to do is my foreground. Let's see, add some columns.
With the basic layout of my foreground finished, adding texture seemed like a good way to find out what the building actually wanted to be. It may seem backwards that I textured before I even knew what I wanted to model, but at least doing this gave me an idea of where I wanted to go with the foreground. After adding some spot lamps to expose my foreground a little more, I moved on to bringing in assets to help fill out the composition. I didn't have the whole thing figured out, but much like texturing, this gave me a good idea of what the space wanted to be.
It's pretty empty, but you could call this finished to some extent as an environment. But I want to go further. I need to go further. I might animate this shot so that there's some spaceships flying through, so let's see how that goes. I've animated the camera. It's so worth it. That's gonna be so much cooler. Okay, so I have this character, and I want to put a gun in their hands. Now this character is animated very simply, and I could just hand animate it, but I want to test it out on this one before I move to a more complex animation, because I actually want to have the gun properly track with the hands and not have it be wonky at all. So okay, so it should be that if I click on this skeleton, go into pose mode and have that hand bone selected, wherever this bone goes, that one. Okay, cool. Okay, so if I add this empty and then I attach this to that bone, it should all be locked in. Then I can take this bone and I can track it to that empty. Whoa, it works. Okay, whoa. And sometimes you just gotta be like, whoa, that's sick, Sometimes you do something and you're like, hell yeah. That is huge, because the next character you'll see is gonna bring a whole other dimension to that.
Oh man, I can't believe that worked. Oh yeah. Next were the spaceships. To animate the ships, I modeled some vertices into a line and converted it to a curve, and had the ships linked to the curve using a follow path. After adjusting the animation's keyframes a little bit, I was able to easily get my ships moving.
Yeah, I'm not gonna bother going to making another path. Why bother making another, They're all animated nicely. By just making one keyframe and then going down into the graph editor and opening up this little wavelength thing, I was actually able to make it where it has a little wobble. And what you end up with is just a little bit of sway. And now everything's looking kind of natural. Okay, I just had a sudden idea. I think these should go in reverse, these ships. I like the backside more. I'm gonna do this the very low effort way. Just select all three and then just spin them around and move them, I guess. Yeah, I think that works way better. Am I crazy if I try volumetrics? You know what? I'm going all the way. I don't care. What do I have to lose?
And this may have been where I got a little too cocky. Volumetrics can take a really long time to render, and I had until midnight. But sometimes you gotta risk it for the brisket. Yeah, that looks good. We're almost done. We're almost there. So I'll see you on the other side, and hopefully nothing goes horribly wrong in that time.
Many unbearable hours later.
Okay, so it's super late. I just got the render done. It took a while. I said it was too ambitious, but hey, here we are. We're gonna make it, and we're in the final steps. And now I gotta composite it and make it look great. So let's go and do that real fast. Okay, down to the wire, and we got it done right here, our final render. One day, literally down to the minute because of rendering. A couple more days of work on something like this, and hey, this could be a really good shot. You know, maybe this is something I'll revisit at some point. But now it's time for that 1 week challenge, baby. 1 week had finally arrived, and I knew it was gonna be a little tricky with the amount of time I had. The idea that I'm going for is I want a subway car. Okay, so I brought in some reference, grabbed these from Google Images, getting really just the basic shape, more like essential details. And just like that, we have some doors. Now I'll add 2 more loop cuts, and then these will become my windows. Now you're starting to see it. Now it's looking like a subway car a little bit. So I'm gonna have a skeleton sitting in a seat, and there's like leaves and stuff growing around it, and then it's gonna come out the window, and then you're gonna see big giant forest. But now we just have to do it. I find an easy thing for terrain. Switch over to sculpt mode, make sure your object is subdivided a bunch, and you can paint on terrain. And if you hit control, it digs in. It might be a weird time to do this, but I think I'm gonna add trees now. And this, I am going to use something that I spent money on. I'm telling you, it's worth it. It's a one-time purchase. It's not one of these subscription things, and it's called Botanique. The bane of my existence in Blender has been trees, and I hated them. I hated trees. I would avoid forest scenes, and now I love forest scenes. Wow, was it worth it? I mean, literally in the same day. I bought the $1 one. I immediately went and bought the $40 one. It's become a game changer for me, and it actually makes me like making forest scenes now. I placed a lot of my trees from the top down view and then adjusted them on the Z-axis so that they collided with the ground nicely. Found it was a little quicker just being able to duplicate everything and then place them where they should be. I continued creating the environment by giving the ground a texture. I made the texture a little bit more natural and scattered using the Polygon Uber mapping node created by the Lord of the Donuts himself. After that, I placed some rocks around the scene, placed them along the sides to aid my composition. I also added some patches of gravel, which really helped make the ground look a little less boring. I added some train tracks to go under the train and added another wooden asset to the side just to add a little bit more chaos to my scene. To finish off the environment, I added some grass, weight painting it where I wanted it, and it ended up giving my scene that final little bit of polish that made the forest feel full and alive. That's looking pretty good. I think I can call it on day 1 because I can spend then day 2, 3, 4, and 5 making that subway car, and I am looking forward to the rest of the week. Okay, so day 2. A few things we gotta note. We've mostly finished the environment, and it is time. It's day 2. We gotta work on this subway car. I'm gonna try to do a subdivision. I am doing this all wrong. I have a better way. Make it generally the right size, and I'm just gonna delete that. So for 1, a subdivision surface. Take that bottom plane off. Okay. Making this shape as simple as possible. If I'm gonna do this the crazy way, I'm gonna do this the crazy way all the way. Okay, so if I did everything right, I basically made all the windows and doors with these cubes. So now, if I take this, add a boolean. Oh yeah, that looks messy, but it works. Delete all of those faces, and there we go. Is it clean? No. Is the topology good at all? Absolutely not. But is it a good starting place? Oh yeah, I definitely think so. Now, I always stress about using booleans and having to fix up the mesh, but it's honestly not that bad. It's kind of like a puzzle. You're just slowly turning it into a quad mesh. And honestly, going over it and re-topologizing again and recreating everything from scratch kind of would have taken longer, so I ended up just cleaning up the whole mesh and moved on. After splitting up my subway car into separate pieces and cleaning up the mesh just a little more, I started moving on to the small little assets that made the overall subway car look better. Modeling the small pieces, I used more basic modeling tools, and this was a lot more fun, just overall filling out the shape and making it feel really cool. Okay, so I've officially finished modeling the exterior, but we are on day 3, so I'm getting a little scared here because now I'm only gonna have 4 days to do everything else. I began creating the interior of the train, like the walls, floors, ceiling, and the dividers of the subway. Again, modeling this was pretty simple, but it did require a little extra care to make sure that things weren't poking out of the train or there weren't little gaps in the interior. But I finished off the interior with some chairs, and it overall wasn't too difficult. But now came the texturing part of my subway car. Pressing forward confidently, I had not yet seen the disaster that was soon to strike me. Okay, so now we're in Substance, so if all goes well, I should just be able to import my model and just have it work. But the moment of truth comes when we go over to this texture settings thing and we bake the textures, and this part terrifies me. Well, it's supposed to look like that. It looks like that.
I may have gone too far in a few places.
Okay, so I know I'm gonna have to make a low poly. This is gonna be interesting. Let's see how this goes. This part was difficult for me. I was having a very big problem with my model, and I had no idea if this was even going to work. On top of that, having to redo everything at a lower polygon count meant that it was not gonna be nearly as crisp. But now I was on day 4 and I had no idea if this was even going to work, so I had no choice but to press on. Here we are, once again, at the moment of truth. I am scared. I'm not sure how this is going to go. Okay, let's see. At this point I was really nervous. If the texture baking didn't work, then I would have to fully restart, and with the time left, I didn't know if I'd be able to make it. But when all hope was lost, oh, it worked. Perfectly? Absolutely not. But did it work? Oh yes. And after many hours of work, blowing through my 3rd and 4th day just rebuilding my entire model from scratch, I had made it. I also went ahead and separated the interior of the car from the exterior, which actually made the texturing turn out a lot cleaner and got me that resolution back that I lost from before. I slapped some materials on, followed some tutorials, and even got stencils on there. Stencils. Ooh, we like stencils, dude. And now my subway car was complete and ready to be brought back into Blender to finish off my animation. But now I had to complete this high poly, slow rendering abomination, and I didn't have much time left. I started with some polishing of my scene, adding sticks and rocks to both the ground and the subway's interior floor. I brought in a skeleton, and while it didn't have a rig or textures, I knew I could work with it. I finished up the rigging of the skeleton and posed it so that it was seated in a chair on the subway. I ended up adding materials to the skeleton after posing, which ended up not being a problem at all, and I was able to unwrap using the auto check button inside of Substance, so life was going pretty good. Okay, so this is kind of a weird idea, but I'm just gonna take plants, because I want it like growing out of the chest, but I don't really know a fast or easy way to do that. That is a good start. I kept layering on more variations of flowers until I was happy with the results, and added some ivy to the chair and windowsill next to the skeleton. This really sold the overgrown feel, and I was super happy with the results. The first render is done. I thought it was going to be so grainy. I thought the fireflies down at the bottom and some of the noise that was left would have been a problem, but this looks good. Oh my god, this is working. I can't believe this. I was now very close to finishing my scene. For the final touch, I added some spot lamps to highlight the skeleton and help expose the subway's interior. With my scene finished, I hit render, but then... Okay, so day 6, and look at that. All of our renders were glitched out. That is unfortunate. You know, so we're gonna have to re-render, we're gonna have to redo some stuff, and then no biggie. This problem wasn't a huge deal, but it did set me back a whole day, and with only one left, I knew I had to work fast to call this animation finished. I began editing the clips together, and even though each render was the same length, I felt that cutting some shots down really helped pace the animation and help the viewer breathe in the scene. I quickly moved on to color correction and grading, adding a nice contrast to the scene and using LUTs to achieve my desired look. I added videos of film grain on top of my original footage, changing its blending mode and opacity to get the desired effect. I did the same thing with some film stock transitions that really helped add a little bit of flair to my scene. I just came up with the name. The Last Stop. Defont.com. Amazing. Double click that, hit install, and you're good to go. I put the new font on my text, editing it how I wanted it, and added an 8mm frame that I tracked the text to, just to give it more of that old analog feel. And after 1 week, I was able to call my short film complete. So I did it. I put to the test how long I should be spending on my artwork. And what did I learn? Well, I learned that I can create art a lot faster. I think I spend so much time procrastinating and overthinking and looming on what I should do next that I'm not creating stuff. And you'll be surprised. You can spit stuff out much faster than you think. Even if it's not always the best stuff, it gives you a place to improve from. So I hope you guys liked the video. Thank you so much for watching. I'm trying out a new format here. Let me know in the comments below if you like it or if you want to see me do anything else. Anything's up for grabs at this point, and I just want to keep creating stuff, and we're going to see where it goes from here. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.